follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you'll know I'm being stalked. And I want to talk about the nature of the abuse I'm receiving. And I think that will become very clear as to why. So there's a guy who took offence over my position on the Alfie Evans case back in April. As you may know, if you followed me then, I did a lot of advocacy in the Catholic media, on social media, and in the mainstream media for Alfie and his family. Now, one particular guy took real exception to that, and he used me as a touchstone, I think, for all his inner sort of angst and hatred and contempt. And the moment that Alfie died, he began sending me a string of messages using a fake account on Twitter, which became increasingly abusive and sinister. It said things like, she's going down, she's going to need more than a shovel where she's going, she's feeling the heat, she's going to have a noose around her neck, I'm going to hold her to account legally or otherwise. People started using violent threats. So one woman said, I'm really happy to be suspended from Twitter. I would smash her face up against a wall. And it got really, really nasty. And he started publishing my address and my phone number, my husband's details, pictures of my husband, pictures of my children. He got my photo. He photoshopped it to make he photoshopped my smile upside down. And he was just non-stop. And every time an account of his got banned from Twitter, he set up another one. So he set up 9 accounts under the name of Emily Giles. And then because he'd stolen somebody's photo and they rumbled him and they reported him to Twitter, he then started a different one, Melissa Stadden. And every time an account of his got suspended for abusive behaviour, he would call me a spiteful, vengeful, bitch, and really nasty names. And I locked my accounts to kind of get rid of this attention, and he was like, I've got my agents on her, and he was screenshotting everything I said. On one day I counted, he sent me 112 tweets. It was really frightening, this kind of spotlight attention and really nasty sort of the threats and what he was going to do and what other people were going to do. And so I contacted the police, and the police said, well, it takes a long time to find out who these people are, but yeah, we'll look into it because we agree that this is not okay. And then in the meantime, I discovered who he was because in between abusing me, he had lashed out at rail commuters. And it turns out that he was a serial troll. If you're a member of a commuter rail users pressure group, he had trolled various members of them, and if they had tweeted anything negative about the train operating companies, he seemed to have a real bee in his bonnet about that, he would start abusing them, and he'd do the same thing. He'd out their pictures, he'd out their contact details, he'd try and write to employers. This was just really very nasty, very frightening, very sinister stuff. And then because he was outed and everybody knew who he was, he stopped his Twitter activity and instead transferred it to a blog that he had under his own name, his own initials. And you can look at his blog, as anybody can, on the Wayback Machine, and you can see exactly who this man is. The reason I'm not naming him is because if the police do take action, I don't want him to say, oh, well, she was harassing me. I have not been harassing him. I really haven't. And the fact is, the things that he has done goes way and above. There's no defence. They are completely defenceless. So, or indefendable. So to go back to kind of things that he's doing every day, he's writing an unpleasant blog saying how much everybody hates me, and he's obviously getting validation from the various assorted nutters and trolls and stalkers that I've picked up over the last 8 years. And it's like, everybody hates you. Look, here's an email with someone saying what a nasty person you are, and everybody, you've got no friends in real life either, Farrow. When you pick up your children from school, you're all alone in the playground. No one wants to talk to you because they all know what a spiteful, nasty bitch you are. You're so lonely. But then the abuse has got very, very nasty. So he repeatedly calls me a filthy Catholic dirty scrabber, or a filthy Catholic scrabber, or a dirty Catholic scrabber. He's called me a Catholic slut. He's called me a Catholic whore. He's called me a Catholic slapper. He's talked about my Catholic female or sex organ, which I'm not going to in crude terms, repeatedly. He said, if you go around Farrow's house and give her a fiver, she'll suck your... He's talked about other people performing sex acts on me. He talks about my sex organs being very loose. He says, how many men have you had up there, Farrow? He has been trying to contact my ex-partner to find out how many men I might have slept with before I made my way to him. He's stolen a picture of our wedding that I think he's got from the photographer's website, and he said, Father Farrow married the skankiest slut in Surrey. He ought to be ashamed of himself. He's a weak and feeble scrote. He's married a skanky slut who already had a child because she couldn't keep her legs together and her knickers up. And we'd like to know how much contact her daughter has with her biological father. And then he started attacking my ex-partner for being stupid enough to sleep with me. He's named my ex-partner. He claimed he hasn't. He claimed he blacked it out, but he made a mistake. He went to his Facebook profile, he screenshotted it, and he put it on his blog. And you could, in 2 places, very clearly see my ex-partner's name. He's alluded to the company that my ex-partner works for, and he keeps attacking my ex-partner for not having tight enough privacy settings, meaning that this guy could find out all the information on him. And he keeps telling him off for having a picture of my daughter with him as his profile. Well, this is a really normal thing to do. People do have pictures of themselves and their children on their Facebook profile. But what they don't expect is that some nutter is going to be stalking their partner who they split up with well over 10 years ago to get information on them. And what he's doing is really sinister, because he keeps blogging stuff about my ex-partner, a lot of which is not true, and threatening to contact him. Now, in some ways, I've told my ex-partner about this, who just is like, this guy is a lunatic, and it isn't bothered by it. Apart from, he said it's really nasty because he's trying to cause trouble, between us. Fortunately, we've got a good relationship, we're really cordial. But actually, if we didn't have a good relationship, that could really impact upon our 14-year-old daughter. Trying to cause trouble between her 2 parents, that's just nasty. And there is no reason for him to know who my ex-partner is. I have never named him on social media. I have never, used his first name or his surname. So actually, this guy has gone to a huge amount of effort to find out who my ex-partner is, and having found him, he's actually blaming him. He's saying, well, it's your fault. It's your fault I found out all this information about you because you were public, or your settings weren't tight enough. Actually, they were tight. He just needed to tighten them up a bit more. But this guy's saying, well, it's fibbing. He was told, now I've checked, and his settings are much tighter. But it's like, why the heck are you stalking? Why are you stalking my ex-partner? What's he got to do with you? The only reason that you are doing this is to put pressure on me and to make me feel bad, and because you think this is justified. So I've told the police about this. I've told the police that he's got my ex-partner, that he's looked at pictures of my 14-year-old. He's talked about looking at pictures of my 14-year-old. He's talked about looking at pictures of my other children, and he's blaming me for the fact that he's looking at pictures of my children. He's talked about where my children go to school. He said that he knows, he's asked why they go to the schools that they go to. None of his business. He's talked about the fact that we're having a kitchen refit and the make of oven I'm getting, and he's saying, I'll get the bitch a belling. He's talked about referencing our parish newsletter to ascertain for definite where we live. So in our parish newsletter, there's mass times. My husband serves more than one parish, so he's going to know when there's someone in the house, when there's someone not in the house. Every night at the same time, you can set your clock by it. The phone has been ringing, you pick it up and it goes dead, and it's a withheld call. We've also had withheld calls at other times of the day. And this is really affecting my husband's ministry, as it's meant to, because it means that whenever we get a withheld call, we're really wary about answering it. But he serves 3 hospitals, and very often if someone's sick, if they're dying, if it's an emergency, even if they're not ostensibly religious, they often want a priest, in a time of crisis, to pray with them and to talk with them and to comfort them. So he's really affecting, what my husband's public ministry, and deliberately so. Every time the phone rings, I'm paranoid. Every time the doorbell rings, I'm paranoid. He's told us that we need to upgrade our security settings, our IT settings. He said he's got a team of people watching us. He's sniffed my IP address, that he's got this top IT squad, searching out information on us online, so we need to tighten our settings. He said he's sending agents around our house. He admits that he's rung us because he knows when my husband's day off is, but he claims he's rung us only once. I don't think so. We've had someone call up and say, "Is that the right number for Caroline Farrow?" And when my husband said yes, "Can I help?" The phone went dead. So I've been to the police, and I last went to the police, so it's Wednesday now. I went to the police on Monday night, and I said, I told them everything, I updated them, and the police officer I had previously been dealing with had said he'd been away covering the royal wedding, but he would get back to me on Monday night. In the meantime, the stalker had got hold of my ex-partner's details and was publishing them. So they said, "This is sinister," and nobody has got back to me. They know the name of this guy. Every day he's calling me a Catholic scrubber, a Catholic slut. He's outing details of my personal life, or what he thinks are details of my personal life. He's trying to slut shame me. He's trying to sexually humiliate me. He's using, sex as a form of verbal violence to put me in my place. Stuff about... One of the things he said, and I'm really sorry to say this, but he said, Catholic whore sat there in her cum-stained knickers. He's talked about my husband buying fetish wear. He repeatedly says that I need a big fat dildo, and he links to the site that he thinks I should get one from. And he obviously thinks that this is really hilarious and really funny and really justified. I'm a mum of 5 children. My eldest is able to have access to the internet, but she doesn't have any social media accounts. And yet he is boasting about looking at pictures of her in Florida and blaming my ex-husband for this. He's blaming my ex, saying it's his fault. He shouldn't have put the pictures up there because, there were creeps like me about. He's laughing that the police aren't doing anything. He's saying that I'm lying about having been to the police, that it's fake, that he's not committing a crime. And I have to say, so I've had no response back from the police. They said they'll get back in touch with me. They haven't. And then I think about the case of Graham Linehan, the writer of Father Ted, who got a warning because he put some information out there that was in the public domain about a transgender woman's male name, their former male name, and he misgendered them. Straight away, he gets a police warning. Meantime, I'm sat here getting sexual threats. Is there a man in the bushes waiting to grab you by the sex organ? I'm getting misogynist hate crime. My husband is being targeted and called names. They're trying to get us chucked out of the Catholic Church, which is really funny because they obviously know nothing. They're saying, strip him of his dog collar. My husband's really weak and feeble because he's not shutting me up. They're doing all of this. And yet the police are turning a blind eye, whereas I can't help but think if I was a member of a different minority, then they would be straight round the door, and it's hate crime. And I was talking about this to a journalist earlier today, and she was saying, well, could it be that people think that actually you've asked for it by putting views out there? But the thing is, we're supposed to live in a free country, aren't we? We're supposed to be able to say what we want, as long as we're not inciting violence. We're supposed to be able to pretty much say what we want and debate ideas. I've never said anything horrible about any particular minority. I've never been banned or suspended from Twitter. I had a 24-hour Facebook ban last week because I talked about people who go to sex shops as being perverts, and Facebook didn't like that very much and banned me for 24 hours. But by and large, I'm not in, I don't run hateful accounts. And it just seems to me that as a Christian, as an Orthodox Christian, the rule of law, if you're an Orthodox Christian and you uphold countercultural ideas on sexual morality, the rule of law does not apply. I shouldn't be shocked by this. This is something we're warned about. Jesus talks about in the Bible, and we know that being a Christian isn't easy. But I guess it's hard because this isn't the country I grew up in. And I think that there are repercussions for all of us if the rule of law is not being applied and upheld equally. We got rid of the blasphemy laws to reflect the fact that we're in a multicultural society. And, I guess, I don't have too much of a problem with the blasphemy laws being repealed, but there's now nothing